Good morning, dear colleagues. It's a pleasure to welcome you. Please take your seats.
His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Lithuania, Gitanas Nausėda.
Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Lithuania, distinguished speakers, vice speakers, chairs of committees, and other members of parliaments, Your Excellencies, ambassadors, dear ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the plenary hall of the Seimas of the Republic of Lithuania, to this high-level meeting of speakers and delegations of NATO countries' parliaments. I hope that you had a pleasant evening yesterday and a good night's rest, and of course I hope that Lithuanian summer does not discourage you. I'm pleased that this meeting is attended by speakers, vice speakers, and other distinguished parliamentarians and ambassadors from 29 parliaments and countries of 31 NATO allies, as well as by the chairman of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, Mr. Ruslan Stefanchuk, the first deputy speaker of the Parliament of the Kingdom of Sweden, the president of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, the NATO Assistant Secretary General for Public Diplomacy, who will later deliver address on behalf of Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg. Thank you again for accepting this invitation to gather here a month before the NATO summit in Vilnius. It is almost a cliché to say that today's Europe, and more globally the whole world, is facing a series of major crises. While it is true that there are many serious challenges facing the world today, including climate change, social tensions, economic uncertainties, pandemic, addressing security concerns is crucial in order to effectively tackle all of these other issues. The example of European integration and creation of NATO alliance serves as a compelling illustration. Following the devastation of World War II, Europe recognized the need to address security concerns in order to ensure lasting peace and stability. The establishment of the EU and NATO provided collective economic and defense mechanisms enhancing the security of its member states. With improved security, European countries were able to shift their focus from internal conflicts and rivalries and external threat towards fostering collaboration and integration. This shows how addressing security challenges can pave the way for progress in other areas. When nations are burdened with immediate security threats, their resources and attention are consumed, making it difficult to prioritize and address other challenges effectively. That is why our meeting today and the upcoming NATO Vilnius summit are so important. That is why we need to address security issues urgently and fundamentally. To put it simply, security is the absolute foundation that we build well-being of our societies on. As I said yesterday, parliaments can and must play a role in ensuring a secure future for our countries and citizens. I recognize that due to constitutional position, role of certain parliaments and chambers in the area of national security and foreign policy varies. Yet I believe that this does not prevent us all from recognizing the importance of the issues under discussion. As NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg put it, parliamentarians have a vital role in keeping our transatlantic bond strong. As such, our gathering today should not be seen neither as a duplication of NATO Parliamentary Assembly nor as an imposition on heads and governments of NATO countries ahead of the summit in Vilnius. It should rather be seen as a meeting that adds value to our joint efforts as allies for the common goal of a safer, better, and more peaceful area in and around the Euro-Atlantic community. Perhaps such a meeting will become a tradition. I would certainly hope so. In case of our parliament, it is always very active on the most important issues of foreign policy and national security. In the beginning of April, we unanimously adopted a resolution stating the key objectives of the upcoming NATO summit in Vilnius. It contains 5 main points. First of all, it calls upon NATO to significantly strengthen the forward defense and deterrence in the Baltic region and the entire eastern flank of NATO, in line with the principle of deterrence by denial. In particular, we stress the necessity to increase the NATO's forward presence battle groups to the level of NATO's forward brigades, for credible NATO air defense positions be established in the Baltic states, and for reinforcement of the pre-positioning of NATO equipment and supplies in the Baltic states. For our part, we are prepared to invest in ourselves. We have already taken strong measures to improve our host nation support infrastructure. Lithuania's commitment is backed not only by words, but also by funding. The Seimas of Lithuania took a decision to ramp up the national defense budget to more than 2.5% of GDP. The Allies' financial commitment to defense is the subject of another point in the said resolution. The third point concerns Finland's and Sweden's membership of NATO, underlining that this will contribute significantly to the security of NATO as a whole. It goes without saying that the Seimas welcomed Finland's membership of NATO and expressed the hope that the ratification process for Sweden's NATO membership will be completed before the NATO summit in Vilnius. Further, recognizing the importance of Ukraine's current role in European security and advocating strategic solutions to ensure long-term peace in Ukraine and in Europe, the Seimas expressed the political will to invite Ukraine to join NATO. In my view, an invitation to Ukraine to eventually join NATO would send the strongest possible signal. I am sure that this will be the topic of discussions both today and in the upcoming month. It is, however, clear that we must adequately address Ukraine's Euro-Atlantic aspirations. Therefore, NATO summit in Vilnius should register clear progress, at least on 3 tracks regarding Ukraine: stepping up NATO's short and long-term practical and military support to Ukraine, institutionally bringing Ukraine closer to NATO, including via establishment of the NATO-Ukraine Council, deeper engaging Ukraine into NATO's structures and processes, and third, political formula leading to Washington and demonstrating an advancement of Ukraine's Euro-Atlantic aspirations. And finally, emphasizing that in pursuit of the rule-based international order, NATO needs the unity of like-minded countries, the Seimas advocates for strengthening partnerships and cooperation with the Indo-Pacific partner countries. Dear distinguished colleagues, to conclude, I would like to thank you once again for your solidarity and your determination not to stand aside on important, even existential issues. Let's remember that although the future is uncertain and complex, but it is up to us to shape it. By defending our values, by harnessing the power of democracy and our ties, we can create a future that is not only sustainable, but also just. And now, I thank you for your attention, and I have an honor of inviting His Excellency Gitanas Nausėda, President of the Republic of Lithuania, to deliver his address.
Dear Speaker of the Seimas, honorable speakers of NATO member parliaments, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor to address such a distinguished audience today in Vilnius. I see this high-level meeting as an important step in the preparation for the NATO summit in July. The leaders of the alliance will be meeting in Lithuania to discuss the most urgent security and defense issues. At this pivotal moment in history, one crucial fact commands our attention. It is the fact that Russia's war in Ukraine, launched almost a year and a half ago, continues to this day. Unfortunately, nobody and nothing so far could make Vladimir Putin end this war. And that means continued pressure on both Ukraine and the entire Euro-Atlantic security architecture. We could have seen this crisis coming. Russia grew increasingly confident after many years of blatant violations of international law. With little to no price to pay for earlier provocations, its leadership came to believe no crime will force the Western countries to take action. They felt empowered to issue ultimatums to the NATO countries. This has never been solely about the issue of Ukrainian statehood. True, this country was, and still, is an indispensable element of Putin's vision for the empire's revival. However, most of the recent Russian threats and demands, while focusing on Ukraine, we are also targeting our alliance. Today, with Ukraine forced to suffer brutal attacks, it should be clear to everyone, Russia will not stop easily. If successful, it will aggressively search for new targets. It's a time that currently keeps our people away from the horrible destiny that befell Bucha, Mariupol, Bakhmut, you name it. If we lose Ukraine, Europe could very well be the next victim. Therefore, we must stop Russia before it is too late. And we can do this only by helping Ukraine. I know there are still some who would prefer any kind of ceasefire or peace negotiations, even without Ukraine's victory. Maybe starting tomorrow. That would be a huge mistake. It would only bring a false sense of relief. It would only put off another stage of this brutal aggression while allowing the aggressor to come back stronger. No negotiations or compromises will do. For us all to return to normality and to be able to feel safe and secure, Ukraine must win this war. And it is our duty and our moral obligation to provide Ukrainians with as much support as they need. Dear friends, to help others, we need to reinforce our own defense and security and to confirm the credibility of our deterrence. I have no doubt that NATO must remain the strongest force. I hope that the NATO summit in Vilnius in July will contribute to this task. We have already made the first steps in Madrid. Now the alliance must move from forward presence to forward defense with no further delay. The Vilnius summit will provide the opportunity to make it a reality. Our task at hand is to bring combat-ready brigade-size units to the forefront of the alliance. Relying on reinforcements only, no matter how quick, would simply not do the trick. It would only signal to the aggressor that there might exist a possibility to test NATO's resolve. We must eliminate this risk. I hope that at the Vilnius summit we will be able to approve new defense plans, including regional ones. Even more importantly, we will have to equip these plans with capabilities. The necessary forces must be assigned, and proper training should begin. Robust decisions on command structure, prepositioning, and enablement must also follow. The war in Ukraine has also demonstrated the true importance of air defense. Thus, I am looking forward to a rotational air defense model being approved, with provisions for the necessary training and integration of our capabilities. Dear speakers, without proper financing, all these plans would mean very little. My hope is for the Vilnius summit to agree on setting a new floor of defense spending at 2% of GDP. However, if we are serious about our security, we must aim even higher. In this regard, the role of national parliaments is crucial. I count on you to take the issue of defense spending seriously. I also find it useful to remember that increased defense spending could boost national defense industries. We need production to go up, not only to provide Ukraine with adequate support, but also to fill our own depleted stocks. I would also like to invite you to support Sweden's bid to become the 32nd NATO member. I have a strong feeling it is still possible to achieve ahead of the Vilnius summit. Sweden deserves to take this important step together with Finland. Finally, I call on you to seriously consider the future of the Ukrainian state. Whenever the war ends, Ukraine cannot be left in the gray zone anymore. Open door is not enough. Political measures must be taken to bring Ukraine as close to the alliance as it is currently possible. Without Ukraine becoming part of the transatlantic community, there will be no long-lasting peace and security in Europe. Dear guests, our duty today is to find a way out of these dark and difficult times. We must do everything it takes to ensure that Putin never dares to test our boundaries and NATO's resolve again. We have to demonstrate our most solid ability to defend each inch of the alliance from the very first minute. Ukraine is currently buying us valuable time at a massive price. We have no right to waste it, and we must not to be late. We have each other and shared values to rely on. That is a priceless pillar we should never doubt or trade away. We also have a collective duty to stay on the right side of the history, and that is what we shall do. Thank you.
His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Lithuania.
Thank you to His Excellency, President of the Republic of Lithuania, for the opening address. Dear colleagues, let us move now to the next part of our meeting. We have 3 sessions ahead of us today. We will start with an overview of the global security challenges facing our Euro-Atlantic community, stressing that we do not live in isolation from challenges in our neighborhood or in other regions of the world, and that we need the like-minded countries of the world to come together in order to ensure a world order based on international rules. In the second session, we will discuss how NATO must respond to these challenges, how it must adapt and transform to continue to succeed in its core mission. The third session will focus on our short and long-term support to Ukraine, whose fate will largely determine the security of the Euro-Atlantic community as a whole. One of the key issues at this session will also be what we need to do to ensure that Ukraine is firmly integrated into the Euro-Atlantic security architecture. Each session will start with introductory presentations of up to 10 minutes. The presentations will be followed by a debate, which will be open for interventions, not exceeding 5 minutes each. On your desks, you will find cards to register for a discussion. If you wish to make an intervention during a discussion, please indicate the session you want to intervene and fill in other requested information on the registration paper and return it to the Secretariat in the plenary chamber. I will chair the whole meeting myself, except for a few bilateral meetings, and also together with Mr. Žygimantas Pavilionis, Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, who will replace me if need be, and my advisor, Rolandas Kačinskas. So we will be free assisting all of you today. Many delegations have also asked whether there will be a conclusion or a joint declaration after this high-level meeting. A joint declaration is not foreseen, as this was not the main purpose of this meeting, and in addition, different parliamentary leaders and parliaments have different mandates on foreign policy and national security issues. However, I, as a chair of the event, have prepared a draft of chair's conclusions, what at least we in Parliament would like to see as a conclusion of our meeting today. And on the basis of these, I will make a summary at the end of the meeting, and I invite you to read the draft conclusions that will be distributed to all of you shortly, and to make amendments or corrections if you see it necessary. So, a few more announcements on the House rules about tomorrow's trip to a military base. Pre-registered participants will go to the Pabrade training ground, as the number of participants is quite strictly observed. And please note that comfortable shoes and clothing are necessary, as it's not going to be as comfortable as here in the plenary session, so just keep that in mind, please. And here we go. We can turn now to our discussion, and it is my great pleasure to invite as a first speaker Senator Joëlle Garriaud-Maylam, President of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, to take the floor and to deliver her address first. Please.
Madame la Présidente du Seimas de Lituanie, pardonnez-moi.
Madam Speaker, well, I do apologize, but I'm going to speak French. So those who need interpretation, please put on your headphones. So, Madam Speaker, chairs, speakers of parliaments, members of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, let me thank the President of the Republic of Lithuania, as well as the Seimas of the Republic of Lithuania, for organizing this wonderful event in Vilnius, ahead of NATO summit in Vilnius, where heads of state and government will meet. Last year, this plenary hall held the spring session of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. We then expressed our solidarity with Ukraine. Therefore, I'd like to congratulate our colleagues from Lithuania who provided us with support for many years and who have warned us about the threats posed by the Russian Federation and about the criminal acts by the Russian Federation. We are well aware of its criminal act that Russia has undertaken back on the 24th of February last year. The Seimas of the Republic of Lithuania and the people of Lithuania have shown solidarity with Ukraine. But Lithuania and its people showed its solidarity with Ukraine for many years, even before the aggression. Lithuania demonstrated its courage and pledged everyone to contribute in every possible way to the victory of Ukraine. Today, we see that Lithuania is again at the forefront, showing its leadership and determination when it comes to the security of NATO and the entire world. We see threats to the world order. Therefore, parliamentary diplomacy has to play its important role. I'm therefore very happy with an opportunity provided today to speak about the ways that we can strengthen support and assistance to Ukraine and to strengthen our transatlantic alliance. I am grateful to each and every one of you for supporting the activities of the Parliamentary Assembly. The NATO Parliamentary Assembly has been functioning for 70 years now. I am privileged to be the president of this assembly for several years now. Several hundred members from various parliaments provide the Parliamentary Assembly with various proposals and are important partners in maintaining cooperation between governments and citizens. We are accountable to our citizens. We therefore have to send their message to the heads of state. Our last session took place in Luxembourg, and we adopted two very important declarations with regard to the NATO summit in Vilnius and with regard to our support for Ukraine. The resolutions have clearly defined the role of NATO in this complex world. The vision is based on a very simple idea. Today, we are facing strategic rivals. Russia and other autocracies are trying to undermine the international rules-based order. Our assembly believes that we have to respond in line with our values that have been enshrined in NATO treaty. These values include democracy, fundamental human rights and freedoms, and the rule of law. These are the values that underpin the rules-based order. And these are the values that are the reason for Russia's attack against Ukraine. Ukrainians are defending themselves. We therefore have to step up our effort in providing support to Ukraine. We will stand with Ukraine as long as Ukraine wins this war. We have to make every effort to isolate Russia and to report about all the crimes committed both by the Russian, Belarusian and Iranian regimes. We have to ensure that the crimes against humanity and actions of genocide are persecuted. Our assembly is in favor of the establishment of the special tribunal. Our major goal is to assist Ukraine, but already now we have to think about the future. Therefore, our assembly called for the global reconstruction plan, for the adoption of the plan based on the Marshall Plan. We have developed the plan which shows that we are ready and we are willing to help Ukraine and the Ukrainian parliament. The declaration also clearly states that Ukraine belongs to the Euro-Atlantic family, that it will become a NATO member country one day, and it is high time we thought about other stages of NATO membership, of Ukraine's membership of NATO. Despite the war in Ukraine, Ukraine is taking the path towards NATO membership. In the declaration, we have also stressed how important it is to provide security guarantees for Ukraine. A few days ago in Bratislava, President Macron stressed the importance of those guarantees for Ukraine, because today Ukraine is defending the security of all European countries. The meeting of foreign affairs ministers in Oslo has also stressed the same. Russia's war against Ukraine is a proof of the brutal actions. A few years ago, NATO was asked to recognize these threats. We now have a new NATO concept with our democratic values at its center. We are convinced that parliaments will have to play their important role. The strategic concept will now have to be turned into concrete actions. Our assembly believes that it is important to establish the Democracy Resilience Center within the NATO framework. We repeated this during our meeting in Luxembourg, and I will repeat the same request during the NATO summit to be held in Vilnius this summer. I am asking you to talk to your governments and to call on your governments to join our initiative. The summit in Vilnius will also be dedicated to NATO's adaptation. Once Finland joined NATO, we will be looking forward to Sweden's membership, hopefully with the help of Turkey and Hungary. Sweden will be participating in the NATO summit in Vilnius as the 32nd member country of NATO. We have to strengthen the deterrence and the deterrence strategy, especially in the eastern flank of NATO. We have to promote the establishment of military and defense infrastructure. We have to also rely on other partners when fighting the increasing power of China, terrorism, hybrid threats, instabilities in our neighborhood, climate change, information warfare, and other challenges. The challenges are multifaceted and very complex. We therefore have to step up our efforts in defense spending capabilities. We therefore have to increase defense spending to 2% or even beyond 2%. We also have to strengthen our industrial base and to create a resilient military industry. In the Vilnius summit, we will provide our recommendations. Let me assure you that the NATO Parliamentary Assembly will play its role and that NATO is ready to defend every inch of its territory, its values, and to support Ukraine till victory. All parliamentarians play a vital role in this. Therefore, I am grateful to you for your engagement, both in the past, now, and in the future. Thank you for your solidarity. Thank you for your unity and your determination. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your address. And now I would like to give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Talat Xaferi, President of the Assembly of the Republic of North Macedonia. Please, the floor is yours. And dear colleagues, I remind you that should you want to make an intervention, please fill in the paper and will be given the floor. Please.
Distinguished Madam President Victoria Chmilíte-Nільsен, distinguished Madam President of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, dear colleagues, I'm particularly honored for having the opportunity to address you today on a topic that is of pivotal importance for the current developments of the Alliance, but also for its future. Holding this high-level meeting in today's format for the first time in the history of NATO carries itself both the symbolic and the necessity for exchange of opinions about our prospective activities as allies on all levels of powers, including our activities on global scale. Distinguished, the multilateralism has been the cornerstone on which the modern international legal order has been founded, an instrument uniting the states that respect the democratic values, yet providing at the same time equal treatment of individual states in their rights and obligations in these international organizations. Within this framework, NATO, since its establishment as a regional multilateral organization, has been a strong advocate for close cooperation with other international organizations having global or geographically determined modus operandi. Its contribution to provide security of Western Europe, the enlargement towards the east, towards the Western Balkan region, and currently towards the north of Europe, as well as its peacekeeping missions and provision of assistance in numerous states around the world, transformed NATO into a global partner and exporter of peace and stability in the world. My state, the Republic of North Macedonia, is an example of a state being an important, while today we are an exporter of peace and active partner and contributor to the alliance. By achieving this strategic goal, which is a majority determination of all our citizens, we have succeeded to protect the independence and territorial integrity, the inviolability of internationally recognized borders, but also to promote good neighborly policy and stability of the wider region. Our efforts to contribute to the global peace and security represent a guide for our institutions in their continuous capacity building, as well as promotion of capabilities for participation in international missions and operations of NATO, as well as those of the European Union and the United Nations. The established system of functioning of NATO provided us until recently to appropriately react in conflict prevention and resolution and to cope with the growing challenges whose nature, shape and complexity are more and more shifting and evolving. The new global security and geopolitical trends carry security threats for the state that require building more appropriate response mechanisms and collective actions by all stakeholders. The changes in the security environment do not leave room to comprehend the threats as isolated ones, as it was the case before, but rather require modernization of capacities and preparedness for a more decisive action. I would particularly outline here the growing threats from third countries: climate change, pandemics, hybrid threats, fake news and disinformation, the fragility of the supply chains, dependence from the strategically significant resources, as well as the artificial intelligence. Esteemed colleagues, today, unfortunately, we are witnessing different interpretation of the implementation and focusing of multilateralism and the introduction of the new models of so-called alternative democracy. Such system of order provide themselves internal legal guarantees for unlimited ruling power, for justified demonization of political opponents and negation and criminalization of the freedom of speech. What is even more worrying in this tendency is their tendency to export of this remodeled democracy beyond their borders, so that they attract new states to this newly created order. Among the instruments they use to deny the global democratic landscape are the hybrid threats, fake news, as well as disinformation that directly influence the safety of our societies, and this is done without the use of any army or weaponry. Their targeted influence through an ideological war affects our democratic resilience, decreases the trust of the citizens in the democratically elected institutions as well as parliaments, including the perception that the institutions do not have capacity to handle such developments. Our region, the Western Balkans, is a living example of all these activities, especially in the last decade. The question which arises here is whether NATO is changing and if we, as member states and as parliaments, contribute to this change and its adaptation to the future. I'm personally confident that we successfully coped with the problem so far and that we have never been more united in the history of the Alliance for existence and promotion of its values and capabilities on the world's political security arena. In this complex multipolar world, the challenges globalization and multilateralism, as states and as politicians, we have to act promptly and prevent this fragmentation, since it represents a serious threat for the whole planet. We have no other alternative but to continue to fight and safeguard the system of the rule of law over the system of rule of force and changing our borders by use of force. Our battle must decisively continue through strengthening of the existing partnerships and search for new, creative partnerships and alliances with states and organizations that still believe in the world founded on democratic and liberal values, their protection for long-standing sustainability and resilience to these negative processes. We, as representatives of our people, are left with the responsibility to continue to promote the faith, the rightness of multilateralism as the only mechanism that ensures peace and prosperity in the world. In the end, I would like to congratulate our hosts for the successful organization of this meeting here today. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Now I would like to invite to take the floor His Excellency Mr. Augusto Santos Silva, President of the Assembly of the Republic of Portugal. Please, the floor is yours.
Madam President, dear colleagues, first of all, I welcome the initiative of the Seimas to convene this high-level meeting of the presidents of the parliaments of NATO. And I think and hope that this is the first of many meetings of this kind to come. You know, Portugal is a founding member of NATO, the political and military alliance to which we belong. The Portuguese membership of NATO enjoys very broad multi-party support in Portugal, in the Portuguese Parliament, as well as within Portuguese society. So there is no ambiguity in the Portuguese position. Today's fundamental issue for NATO is the Russian war against Ukraine and the need to support Ukraine's legitimate right to self-defense. Russia's continuous aggressive behavior is our current main threat, underlining the core mission of NATO, defense and deterrence. And this is the first idea I wanted to propose in this intervention. In order to respond to this threat, to the Russian threat, but also in order to address other risks and challenges, such as international terrorism and China's assertiveness, as identified in our strategic concept, we need to have a 300 degrees approach. Since we live in a world of global interdependencies, that requires a global vision and a global approach from NATO. And this is my second idea, the need for us to have a 360 degrees approach. To a global world, we need a global attitude from our side. A 360 degrees logic implies that we shall also consider not only our east flank, but also our south flank, especially when we witness an increased aggressive behavior of Russia in Africa, as well as military and diplomatic investments of Moscow in the Sahel region, in Central Africa, and in Southern Africa. So in order to fulfill our main mission of defense and deterrence, in order to implement this mission with a 360 degrees approach, we have also to look into our south. This is my third idea. And believe me, the Portuguese military and the Portuguese diplomats can witness it, because we have military working in training missions and in peace missions and operations in Mali, and we can witness the way in which the Russians are spoiling the efforts of the international community right there. And same goes to the Republic, the Central African Republic, and same goes right now to the Southern African region. No doubt that our defense and deterrence capacities are focused today on the eastern flank. No doubt on that. Meanwhile, this has implications also in the south. On the other hand, our defense and deterrence will be stronger if supported by NATO's other main tasks, namely crisis management and cooperative security. The reinforcement of strategic partnerships, the theme of this session, the reinforcement of strategic partnerships, pursuing a multi-targeted partnership policy with other regions is also essential for the security of the North Atlantic. And in my view, this means two priorities: the political dialogue with our African partners and the strengthening of our ties with our allies in the Indo-Pacific regions. These are two strategic issues for NATO if we want to fulfill rightly all our three missions, including the defense and deterrence task. This is my fourth and last idea that I propose to our collective reflection. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your intervention and important insights about the need for a 360-degree approach. That's why we invited to share our views on the global approach to the security and defense challenges in this session. And now I would like to give the floor to Madame Valérie Rabault, First Vice President of the National Assembly of France, please.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente, chère Victoria. Merci pour votre invitation.
Thank you, dear Victoria. I'm glad to be here in Vilnius and to see so many friendly faces in this wonderful plenary chamber in the Seimas. Ladies and gentlemen, it has already been said that this meeting of speakers of NATO member countries, and I thank all those for hosting this event. We're here a month ahead of the NATO summit, so this is a very rare opportunity for us to speak ahead of our governmental representatives. We have a wonderful chance to discuss our differences that will help us to adopt better decisions in July. I want to mention three things. First of all, I want to express our strong support for Ukraine and its people. And I'm very happy to see here among us Mr. Ruslan Stefanchuk, Speaker of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. The war launched against Ukraine has undermined the international law-based order. This is the war that we all have to engage in. As yesterday said Mr. Macron in Bratislava, today we have to help Ukraine in all ways possible in order for Ukraine to be able to launch counter offense in an effective way. This will help to ensure sustainable peace. We have to take on every effort to help Ukraine in always possible. In France, we provide Krotar and Cesar defense systems to Ukraine. During the Crimea Forum in Zagreb, I have mentioned that the longer this crisis and conflict takes, the better opportunities can be taken by our adversaries. And the more public support we have for Ukraine, the more physical and financial support we can provide for this country in order to ensure rules-based order. The second topic is NATO and its borders. First of all, we can take pride in the force of our alliance and its capacity to ensure the security of its borders. And we should not forget our American friends here that contribute very substantially in helping Ukraine. France has also made its bid in ensuring this securing and defending the flag in Romania and Lithuania. France and Germany will send a joint brigade for defense in July in Vilnius. The membership of Finland and Sweden in NATO will ensure security in the Baltic Sea region. We need to ensure security guarantees within the NATO for Ukraine. Heads of state and governments of our countries will decide on the concrete steps to implement it. On my part, I've invited chairs of the foreign affairs committees to express their support to Ukraine and join NATO for strong NATO guarantee. This message is very important for us and especially for Russia, because we have to speak about peace here. We cannot allow this conflict to be frozen. We have to ensure territorial integrity and inviolability of borders. I have not forgotten that it is very difficult to implement all these objectives, especially the growing power of China. And the fact of cooperation between China and Russia in different infrastructural projects. Mr. Silva has mentioned that we have to speak about global NATO. Jens Stoltenberg, Secretary General of NATO, has mentioned that we have to speak about three challenges. First, we have to ensure strategic power in different parts of the world. We also have to work together with the USA. And finally, we have to remember different challenges of technological developments and the problems of climate change. This global NATO is a vision that we have. This will help us to ensure cooperation. It is very important to ensure the cooperation between NATO and the European Union. And finally, in the recent years, the European Union managed to react in a very quick manner, and 67 billion euros was allocated for supporting Ukraine and receiving refugees, including other types of assistance, and building independence from Russian energy resources. It is very important for us to increase our military budgets. In France, we have earmarked that in the coming 6 years, our defense budget will be 413 billion euros. This is extremely important. We see that countries in the Pacific have larger military budgets than that of the European countries. We also see a very important change in Europe. When we speak about security, we have to bear in mind cooperation with other regions and countries, especially in the areas of cybersecurity, space, and maritime security. We should not forget support for Ukraine as well, and we should also fight the interference of other countries into our policies. Speaking about the European Union, we have to think about the European Union as the main supporter of NATO. In NATO, we have to speak about the integration and about the enlargement of organization and the membership in the EU of Western Balkan countries. We have to implement all the goals that I've mentioned. The President of France mentioned the day before yesterday that we have to look for ways to employ innovative solutions by including and involving Western Balkans, Moldova and Ukraine in the EU in addressing different challenges such as economic integration, the rule of law.
Cette force européenne, c'est nous qui pouvons la porter et la concrétiser.
We should not ask when or if, but we have to ask how we should ensure enlargement and to ensure that the EU is a strong ally of NATO.
Thank you, dear Valerie. And now I would like to ask to invite to take the floor Dame Rosie Winterton, Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons of the United Kingdom. Please, the floor is yours.
Madam Speaker, it's an honour to be here today at this high-level meeting, as others have said. The first time NATO speakers, vice speakers and senior parliamentary colleagues have met in this way. And I add my congratulations to Lithuania for bringing us together at such a crucial time before the NATO summit in July. Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the UK Parliament, was extremely disappointed not to be able to be here, but he is very supportive of speakers meeting in this way to strengthen the links between our parliaments and NATO. NATO epitomises the importance of global alliances. So I know we are particularly pleased to welcome Finland as the latest addition to NATO and to see the first Deputy Speaker here today with his colleagues. I'm also pleased to see the Swedish representation, and I hope that at the main summit in July, we will see Sweden as the next newest full member of NATO. These are historic changes in strengthening our collective security. As so many others have said, the war in Ukraine is truly horrendous. The UK is resolute in its support and unwavering commitment to Ukraine and the Ukrainian people as they face Putin's Russia, the most acute threat to our security. That conflict embodies so many challenges, not just the illegal invasion of a sovereign nation, but the weaponization of fuel and food supplies and the constant threat of Russia using its nuclear capability. So I know we all welcome the Speaker of the Ukraine Parliament here today, and at the main summit in July, the UK supports Ukraine moving to a new, closer relationship with NATO, as our Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said in Moldova yesterday. The UK Speaker has welcomed President Zelensky to our Parliament, first in March 2022, when he addressed us via screens installed in the COVID pandemic in the chamber of the House of Commons, which are now known as the Zelensky screens. And in February this year, we were able to welcome him in person to our Parliament, and colleagues across the House of Commons and the House of Lords stood united together to hear him speak. Of course, NATO's partners stretch much further than Ukraine. Partners like Moldova, Georgia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, who are also anxious about the threat from Russia. Partners around Asia-Pacific, which are on the front line of disruption and threats from China. Our southern partners, who are on the front line of terrorist threats. And partners who are like-minded countries who share our democratic values and wish to protect democracy from cyber threats emerging from malign actors who wish to cause disruption. We are all facing a huge number of challenges at home in our own countries and globally together. Climate change affects us all. It knows no borders. Populations move away from areas where there have been floods or extreme heat, or where they cannot grow food, and mass migration puts pressure on the receiving countries, which can lead, as we know, to political pressure within the countries, as well as the opportunity for terrorism threats to develop. In this uncertain world, we need allies, and the global organization that is NATO is the most successful defensive alliance. Our shared commitment to Article 5 of the treaty is our most powerful deterrent. And it is very symbolic to be in Lithuania today, a country that is also on that front line, as it has been so many times in its history. NATO has set itself an ambitious new strategic concept. Although the true challenge was not writing the document, it will be agreeing the action plan that allows us to achieve this ambition. And gathering here as senior parliamentarians, we have an exciting opportunity, not just to meet each other and exchange views, but to take action when we get back home. High-level events such as this allow us to link not only together with colleagues in our own national parliaments who regularly engage with NATO issues, such as those who attend the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, but also we can draw in others at this crucial time. Together, we in this room can promote the work of NATO in our parliaments to maintain the trust, confidence, and support of those parliamentarians who are not able to be with us here today. And here in Vilnius, as I've said, the threat faced from Russia is tangible. It is on Lithuania's doorstep, which is why having the NATO summit here in July is such an historic moment. And parliaments and parliamentarians are in a unique position, and I would say have a responsibility to explain how the work of NATO and this key forthcoming summit affects our citizens' everyday lives. Because it is no longer about what might be seen as traditional defense spending, but it is about so many wider issues: energy supply, climate change, population movement. NATO member states are committed to spending at least 2% of GDP on defense. But now we need to get there at a time when there are many cost pressures for our respective governments and our citizens. Engaging with our citizens and explaining the urgency in achieving these goals at a time when I say they face financial pressures themselves. That's where we have a vital role to play as democratically elected parliamentarians. The NATO Parliamentary Assembly met recently in Luxembourg, as has been said, and the UK Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has asked me to emphasise his strong intention to ensure that our Parliament has a full and thorough debate ahead of the July NATO Leaders Summit. so that parliamentarians can use that opportunity to not only explain the changes and decisions which will be made at the summit, but also to show our citizens that our Parliament is fully involved and informed about the vital work of NATO. So this meeting is a unique opportunity to exchange those ideas on how we can use our privileged positions as speakers, vice speakers, and distinguished members of our national parliaments to make NATO's strategic concept a reality for the people we represent. But as I say, this is not only an opportunity, it is a duty on all of us to show how important our democratic institutions are, why we have a respect for an international rules-based order, and why we must and will defend them. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your address. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Giulio Tremonti, Chairman of the Foreign and European Community Affairs Committee of Chamber of Deputies of Italy. And dear colleagues, today Italy celebrates Festa della Repubblica, Italian National Day and Republic Day. So let's extend our heartfelt congratulations.
Until yesterday, political geography of Europe was visible on two lines. The first was pan-European, the ancestral idea of Europe from the Atlantic to the US. This is example in Charles de Gaulle. The second one was inspired by the trend towards a progressive economic integration between Europe and Russia, from the old German Ostpolitik arriving to the new gas stream network. Putin's war changed everything and dramatically. But not only the war is changing our history. In addition, Europe is facing the evolution of globalization in a new, fragmented and furious world. In this geopolitical scenario, which is the position of Europe? There are two graphics which to be presented at table. One is to sit with your name written on the place card. The other one is with your name, but written on the menu among the dishes available. The copyright Europe Great Again is by Prime Minister Bonsies in his speech in Heidelberg last year. It's right. No Europe without NATO, but no NATO without a stronger Europe. Great Europe Again requires a new European political machinery with a new political software and with a new constitutional hardware. New problems cannot be solved by all means indeed. New political software today embraces a dogmatic idea of democracy is dominant. As an effect, Europe is divided in two parts. One which is supposed to be totally democratic, the other one which is considered not enough. The last example of this division was in January 2001, when Poland was condemned by the European Court of Justice, declaring Poland out of the rule of law. Few days after, it was the opposite because of solidarity expressed by Poland to Ukraine. European leaders who asked for the condemnation and sanctions against Poland praised it. Europe cannot be based on an artificial separation between elite and people, between modernity and traditions. Where you don't know the past, you lose the future. And this is relevant when, in so many parts of Europe, memory means sufferings and victories of peoples. Traditions, Let me quote Churchill: "A love for tradition has never weakened a nation. Indeed, it has strengthened nations in their hour of peril." Let me remember a personal episode. Some years ago, I was invited for a lesson by the Ratzinger Foundation in a town in the northern part of Poland. After the lesson, walking in the street with the bishop, women note as a sign of respect. Respect to the bishop, not to me. Do you really think that European Union, founded by great men, can be led by technicians? Do you really think that Europe can stand as the Angelus Novus, the symbolic figure which moves forward with its head turned back? Following the elite, Europe is losing its soul, drawn in the liquid of finance, and cannot be so. The old European triad, liberté, égalité, fraternité, is still better than the last failed triad, globalité, marché, monnaie. Looking to the new believer, Pope Francis, in his speech at Budapest University, spoke of bridges as a symbol of the necessary union of European culture. Putin destroyed any bridge. Inside Europe, we must do the opposite. In addition, today, I see the risks of fluid doctrines, forgetting family and nativity, imposing to everybody a new, neutral, and artificial European identity. Just to be clear, the cancel culture or the new gender culture, speaking only of individual rights, ignoring collective duties, is producing dramatic social effects. The decadence of Roman Empire starts with Emperor Elagabalus, men during the day, women during the night. Today, our welfare state is working from cradle to the grave. Today, our demographic curves are dramatic. In a very short time, no credits, no welfare state, no public health, no pensions. This is not relevant for happy few people. This is a tragedy for the masses of people and consequently it's a tragedy for Europe. No democracy without a demography. New political era. A new European constitutional architecture is necessary today for the reasons of new enlargement from Ukraine to other countries. Today we can find intelligent new political visions looking at three different but basic speeches. In Paris, President Macron; in Krakow, Chancellor Scholz; in Heidelberg, Prime Minister Morawiecki. We must work on these political materials. Flashback. In 2003, in the program for the Italian European semester, the proposal was to issue Eurobond for financing European infrastructures and for military industry. I'm grown old, but I remember that at the time the reaction to these proposals was negative. The orthodox reaction was purely financial, no more public debt, even if European. The British reaction was very political. No, this should be nation building. Exactly. Nation building. Now, 2 decades after, we have European debt and we are inside the war. During the other war, in December 1941, in the Manifesto di Ventotene, and European foreign policy and then European defense were defined essential for the building of Europe. Time has come. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now the floor is open for those who have signed up to make an intervention. At the moment, we have 6 colleagues. If you feel like adding to this list, please do. And first, I would like to invite His Excellency Gordon Jandrokovic, Speaker of the Croatian Parliament. And next is Her Excellency Daniela Durovic. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. Not only does the war in Ukraine represent a global security challenge, but it has become a major challenge in various domains of global economy. Disrupted critical supply chains, energy, food, to name but a few. In order to have the most effective resilience in such an interconnected world, we must join forces with those with whom we share common values. That said, with Finland, our alliance has become stronger and the Euro-Atlantic area more secure. We hope we won't wait long for our Swedish friends to join. The very fact that Finland and Sweden, after decades of neutrality, decided to become NATO members is another proof that the global security circumstances have changed dramatically. We must remain mindful. Russia is not relenting in spreading its malign influence on the borders of our alliance and beyond. We observe this daily and closely in our neighboring Western Balkans. We also see Russia spreading its reach, including by Wagner Group, around the global south. They are gaining enough experience on the ground to be taken as an imminent threat to NATO security. We see their involvement in various trade activities, influencing local affairs in different countries, either economically or politically, on a broader spectrum. And we must do our utmost not to let autocrats win the battle of narratives anywhere. So we have to constantly promote order against chaos, freedom against dependence, prosperity versus poverty. In order to succeed in this, it is crucial for our alliance to adopt a comprehensive strategy. It needs to include hard and soft policies, international and regional engagement approach, as well as increased diplomatic and security cooperation. NATO's communication, coordination and coherence with other international organizations such as UN, EU and the African Union should be strengthened through existing initiatives and the tailor-made ones in the future. Dear colleagues, as the most successful military alliance in the world, NATO has timely recognized the importance of the values-based cooperation. The NATO 2030 agenda, agreed by NATO leaders at the Brussels 2021 summit, seeks to strengthen NATO's global cooperation with the like-minded partners. One of the main goals in this sense remains the defense of the rules-based international order and its institutions. Meanwhile, we know that Beijing's growing assertiveness presents a geostrategic challenge. And at the same time, NATO and China are still not adversaries. So we should be pragmatic and try to find common ground where possible. In this vein, Asian Pacific partners with their respective know-how and knowledge of their region are of great importance to the alliance. There is definitely room for broadening cooperation with this group of partners. Russian aggression of Ukraine, terrorism, climate change, hybrid and cyber threats, emerging and disruptive technologies, and the misuse of artificial intelligence, this is quite an extensive list of challenges. Indeed, they have galvanized the globe, giving additional strength to others. By this, of course, I mean autocratic regional and global actors. Some of them clearly seek to undermine the rules-based international order. In accordance with our 360 degrees approach, along with Asian Pacific partners, the upcoming NATO summit represents an opportunity to gather partners at risk, such as Bosnia and Herzegovina, Georgia, Moldova, as well as partners from the south. That's why I believe one of our deliverables should be to communicate messages of support to the regions of NATO's strategic importance, the Western Balkans and the Black Sea area, as well as to the global south. NATO must be alert and keep in mind that many latent conflicts make these regions extremely volatile and prone to various harmful influences. That is why continuous vigilance remains crucial, as well as our steady coordination and unbroken unity. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to give the floor to Her Excellency Daniela Djurovic, President of the Parliament of Montenegro, and next is Her Excellency Madam Urška Klakočar-Zupančić. Please.
Thank you very much, dear Victoria, dear distinguished colleagues, speakers of the parliaments, fellow parliamentarians, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to have the opportunity to address you on behalf of the Parliament of Montenegro at this important parliamentary event leading up to the summit, which I'm convinced will reaffirm our unity and solidarity, as well as NATO's role as a foundation of our collective defense. Due to the fact that we live in a time of constant crisis, our alliance keeps facing and adapting to the new global challenges in order to be able to successfully respond to threats from all directions, from the east, the south, cyberspace, and outer space. Repercussions of the Russian aggression against Ukraine are global. In this sense, the importance of the joint actions of NATO members and other partner countries sharing the same position in relation to the aggression is even greater. We have to talk about common approaches to global security challenges threatening NATO interests, to share our points of view through deeper political engagement, and to seek specific areas for cooperation in addressing out common security issues. In this context, I welcome the decision to increase political and practical support to our partner countries threatened by Russia's actions, especially to Bosnia and Herzegovina, Georgia, and Moldova. It is important that NATO remains engaged in building up their integrity and resilience, developing capabilities, maintaining their political independence and state sovereignty. In this sense, Montenegro supported the development of the defense capacity building package for Bosnia and Herzegovina and allocated significant financial resources for this purpose. Given the current developments in the Western Balkans region, we call for more coordinated NATO-EU approach to this region. Montenegro sees this as an important prerequisite for the region's overall resilience to all challenges that we are facing. With our Asia-Pacific partners, we share a common interest in strengthening the international order based on clear rules. Activities with AP4 partners are essential in various areas, including cyber defense, new technologies, and countering disinformation. Due to the complex security challenges in Europe and the Euro-Atlantic area, the need to intensify NATO-EU cooperation has increased significantly in the last few years. Bearing in mind that 21 EU members and 4 EU candidate countries are also part of NATO, as well as that 90% of the EU population live under the NATO umbrella, there is a clear need to coordinate activities of those two organizations in dealing with common security challenges. An important feature of our alliance is that it does not aspire to become a military alliance outside of the Euro-Atlantic framework, but rather strive to develop partnership and cooperation with other regions in order to achieve security and stability at the global level. This cooperation seeks to strengthen mutual understanding, support the rule of law, and promote common values as the foundation of the international order. Dear colleagues, Montenegro firmly believes that the open door policy is one of the most successful NATO policies, and we are happy to see further promotion of this approach. In a historic turn in their security policies, Finland and Sweden decided to join alliance whereby the alliance itself proved that its door remained open. We stand for the right of every nation to choose its own path, which we have clearly demonstrated by the acceleration ratification procedure with regard to the accession protocols for those two countries in the Parliament of Montenegro. We welcome the recent accession of Finland and look forward for Swedish to become a member of NATO, I believe, by the upcoming summit in Vilnius. Looking ahead, we see Ukraine as part of the Euro-Atlantic family. We stand by our 2008 decision that Ukraine will become a member of NATO and by principles of underpinning the open door policy. The support we have been providing for years, and especially since February 2022, it's a clear sign of long-term commitment to Ukraine. We still and we will strongly support the consensus in Vilnius on the need to remain united and stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes and to enable them to prevail in this conflict. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, dear Daniela. Now I would like to give the floor to Her Excellency Urška Klakočar-Zupančić, Speaker of the National Assembly of Slovenia, and next will be Madam Elžbieta Viteka.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. NATO has been a cornerstone of peace, stability and cooperation for over 7 decades. As the world changes, its mission has evolved to address an array of complex global challenges. Today we find ourselves in an interconnected world where these challenges transcend international borders, requiring a united effort to tackle them effectively and confront them collectively. The strength of NATO's partnerships lies in their diversity and inclusivity. Partner countries bring unique perspectives, experiences, and contributions to the table. They enrich NATO's knowledge base, broaden its reach, and enhance its ability to address global security challenges effectively. Furthermore, NATO's partnerships offer opportunities for capacity building and institutional reform, which are essential for the consolidation and strengthening of democratic institutions. These common efforts contribute to the establishment of accountable and effective institutions that uphold democratic values. Moreover, NATO partnerships serve as a powerful tool for building, preserving, and promoting democratic values in an increasingly interconnected world. This summit in Vilnius will be a crucial milestone that should send a signal of unity and solidarity at this challenging time for Euro-Atlantic security. It should focus on promoting political dialogue with partner countries, especially those most vulnerable, namely Ukraine, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Georgia, and Moldova. The summit must reaffirm the right of sovereign nations to walk their own path and to choose their own security arrangements. It is a key part of the United Nations Charter, which obligates all nations to settle disputes peacefully, to respect sovereign borders, and to refrain from threatening or using force. We must commit to stay firmly on the side of Ukraine, not only because it is the morally right thing to do, but also because it serves our common interests. In recent days, it has become clear that other parts of Europe likewise urgently require our attention. We should also focus on the Western Balkans and step up efforts to help solve the Kosovo-Serbia dispute. Further instability in Europe as Russia's war rages in Ukraine must be avoided at all costs, which is why we are pleased the strategic concept has identified the Western Balkans as a region of strategic importance for the alliance. We live in a dangerous world and can no longer afford to treat defense as up for debate. It is the fulcrum of our freedom and prosperity. Military capabilities are undoubtedly the linchpin of the alliance, but we should not underestimate the significance of NATO partnerships as a tool for preserving democratic values such as individual liberty, the rule of law, human rights, and the promotion of democratic institutions on a global scale. My dear colleagues, I do hope that peace shall be reached and will prevail soon. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to give the floor to Her Excellency Elżbieta Witek, Speaker of the Sejm of Poland, and next in line is Mr. Richard Scholz.
Madam Speaker, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. As a result of the war started by the criminal regime of Vladimir Putin, the whole world, including the North Atlantic Alliance, are faced with a completely new geopolitical situation and the necessity to take action to create a new architecture of global security. In the speeches that we have just heard, the theme of the threat stemming from Russia's imperial policy resounded particularly significantly, but there was also information about other threats or challenges that we will have to face together. There was mention of China, terrorism, modern technologies, artificial intelligence, nuclear weapons, or effects of climate change or migration. There were, in those speeches, proposals of solutions. In short, we might characterize them as more cooperation based on common democratic values adapted to global challenges, proposals of more partnership and less national egoism. Stronger NATO adapted to new global challenges and a safer international environment. There is a kind of consensus in the sphere of declarations, whereas when we talk about detailed solutions, we still have a lot of work ahead of us. Despite some pessimistic diagnoses signaled by some leaders, it turned out that NATO was a credible and reliable and effective partner when the moment of trial came. However, the existence of NATO alone was not a sufficient guarantee and a sufficient deterrent to restrain such criminals like Putin from starting a cruel and ruthless war. Based on this diagnosis, we are jointly looking for solutions that will make the North Atlantic Alliance and its partners even stronger and safer. We have welcomed the decisions signaled at the NATO summit in Madrid in June last year, namely, in the context of recognizing Russia in the new strategic concept of the alliance to be the most significant and direct threat to the security of the alliance. Also, the plans to strengthen the presence of NATO along the eastern flank and also to agree on a new model of NATO forces, predicting the creation of a new reserve of high readiness force. Welcoming these plans, we look forward to the Vilnius summit in July, and we hope that this Vilnius will not only show the unwavering unity and determination of the allies and to accelerate NATO's adaptation to a new era of strategic rivalry, but above all, we expect full implementation of last year's summit findings. I strongly believe that in the face of the new global challenges that we have been talking today, NATO should remain the main forum for a dialogue and for transatlantic cooperation. We hope, and I address these words to Congressman Mike Turner, chair of the Intelligence Committee in the US Congress, we count on the continuation of American involvement in European security, including by maintaining and strengthening the military presence and participation in joint drills and training. On the other hand, I do share the view that responsibility for the future of the alliance requires its European members to contribute more to the development of defense capabilities. The leaders of our countries will talk about the increase in defense spending at the Vilnius summit, and in this context, I am also counting on far-sighted and courageous decisions. Poland has decided in this year's budget to spend 3% GDP on defense, but in reality, this will be 4%. This is a huge effort for Poland, but security knows no price. This is why we are making this effort also as regards the growth of the defense industry. Our citizens see it. The feeling of security is growing because we do show our true involvement, and we hope to be able to count on each other. So I call on colleagues from other states, members of NATO, just like Lithuania, who is making the effort, like Poland, to make the effort to take up this huge task, because this is our common goal. This defense of Ukraine, this is also the defense of our independence. And the world is hating Ukraine. Why? Because Ukraine took up the weapons, is fighting, and they are defending themselves, and we need to help them. And we have to do the same in our countries. We need to have the right forces, the right troops, and in order to do it, we need to have more spending, more funding. Because security is above all price. At the end, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my firm conviction that the Vilnius summit should send a really clear political signal to Ukraine in order to further strengthen Ukraine's path to NATO membership. I am pleased to hear that NATO has invited President Zelensky to attend the summit, and I hope that during that summit there will be also a meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Commission at the level of heads of state and government. Our leaders in 1 month will have to face some fundamental decisions. The democratic legitimacy that we have as speakers, and I hope the joint conclusions that I hope we'll be able to signal will constitute an important sign for our leaders. Therefore, I would like to thank my dear friend Victoria for this very precious initiative to meet, to be able to discuss these very important issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, dear Elżbieta. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Richards Kols, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee of Sejm of Latvia. And next will be Mr. Teo Franken. Please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Your Excellencies, dear colleagues. First of all, I wanted to thank Lietuvos Seimas for organizing this event, Žygimantas, especially for you, to gathering also the chairs of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Madam Speaker, in your opening remarks for this gathering, you mentioned that there won't be a declaration, there will be a summary after this meeting. Well, I have to say there's great news yesterday. On arrival for all the speakers to Vilnius, the 22 chairs from the 20 NATO member states came out with a very straightforward joint statement on Vilnius summit in relations to Ukraine, calling for a clear expression of invitation for Ukraine to join NATO. I call everyone to echo this message wide and broad. So there is already a strong momentum building prior to the Vilnius summit, and I hope we can deliver. We can deliver, not produce more paper, but really tangible results, and this time tangible results for Ukraine. This said, of course, there are still necessities in our region as well. I do call for the Vilnius summit as well to already talk about the new defense plan for the Baltic region, that since our colleagues from Scandinavia are joining the family, Finland is already there, Sweden is about to join. In relation to Sweden, again, I'll be straightforward. It's a shame that in some NATO member states, where political parties are enjoying absolute majority, they fail to deliver on ratification of Swedish accession to NATO. It is a shame, and it doesn't look good.
Well, with this said, of course, I wanted to talk on not only in relations to our region, where we are right now, Baltics, not the eastern flank, but also the global south. As rightly mentioned, the axis of evil are gaining momentum. It's not only Russia that is undermining international rules-based order. It is Iran, it is China, and those authoritarian regimes, we might, ridiculate that they don't have the power. But then again, let me just mention one organization that for 10 years or so for its existence was really tarnished to, like, it's unimportant, but it's gaining momentum. It's the BRICS. And let me remind you, BRICS, compiles altogether almost, I think, even more than half of the world's population. And it is something that we have to start think about right now, how we get along and how we counter the building danger that is coming from this particular organization. Last but not least, since, well, it's chair's prerogative, the foreign affairs on the joint statement in relation to Ukraine, but I hope the whole alliance shares our view. But in the meantime, it would be also odd to see that in Vilnius summit, we extend official invitation for Ukraine to join NATO while we still have in force Russia-NATO Council Founding Act that is still in force. Doesn't show us something is wrong? Shouldn't we address, again, that's an elephant in the room at some point. And we should address that as well, that it's, it's not normal. That we are fighting the aggressor. We have designated as aggressor towards NATO in a strategic concept. But we still have in force a document, a legal document, binding document, by the way, which is called the NATO-Russia Council Founding Act. It's not okay. Last but not least, one thing that I really wanted to share with you, it's the axiom, actually, when it comes to Russia, Kremlin, Putin. Really, nothing provokes more Putin than show of weakness and fear. That is what he really feeds on. And with this, I would conclude with Marie Curie. She once said that there's nothing in life to be afraid. It is only to be understood. So what I really commend to all of us is, let us understand more so we can fear less. Thank you once again for organizing this very important meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Theo Franken, Head of Delegation to NATO Parliamentary Assembly of Chamber of the Representatives of Belgium. And next is Madame de Villers-Châtelaine. Please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for giving me the floor. And I think thank you for the invitation as well. I'm not a Speaker of the House. I'm just the head of the Belgian delegation to NATO PA. I think there were a lot of interesting remarks, a lot of interesting speeches. I have some remarks. I didn't make a real text, but I have some remarks I want to make. First of all, when I was jogging this morning, I passed the KGB house, and it makes me very humble. I'm from Western Europe. We never had Russian oppression, so it's always very humble to come here. I feel very humble to speak also about Russia and Russian oppression and about Ukraine. I can say two things. In our public opinion, full membership of NATO for Ukraine, it's not easy. I can say second thing, that there's a lot of questions in my public opinion, in my country, in our democracy, in Belgium, about a lot of attacks on Russian soil. It's not clear. As we all know, truth is the first to lose when it's war. What is the truth? Where is it coming from? Is it with Western delivered weapons? What is happening? It's not really clear. That's something that maybe has to be sorted out. I think there's some red lines that were everybody engaged to. We're delivering a lot of weapons and we're supporting Ukraine. Let that be very, very clear. Belgium is supporting Ukraine for 100%. We're taking care of their refugees, the women, the children, every single day. We're trying to do as good as we can, delivering weapons, delivering humanitarian support, and we will keep on continuing, give full support, diplomatic support also on the summit in Vilnius in a couple of weeks. But there are questions, and I think that we are here also to ask them, because that's our role, that's why we got elected, to ask questions that a lot of people also ask. Then second, on a global approach, a lot of people were talking about, and that's why I do my intervention on this chapter, the global approach. I think it's very important that we keep on emphasizing that new strategic concept, like it was, it got voted and it got adopted last year in Madrid, that we're talking about 360 degrees approach. Everything is linked with everything. And I'm very, very concerned about the South. I'm very concerned about the South. Monday I was at the lecture of Robert D. Kaplan, one of the biggest geopolitical thinkers of our times, in Brussels. He was there invited. And he was talking about the global South and the fact that Europe makes the mistake to see, and NATO makes the mistake to see the Mediterranean as the border of the West. The border is not the Mediterranean, the border is the Sahel. The border is deeper in the south. And we need to find a good way of working together with North African countries and the big Mediterranean region. That's in our own importance, that is in our own interest. And that's also something very, very thing to emphasize. I know that Arab Spring was a failure. There are autocracies. Even Tunisia fell, but maybe we have to find, as democracies in the West, to find a way where we defend, like Joël said, defend really clear our values, but find a pragmatic way to start dealing with those countries, because we will need them. When I see illegal immigration and the state of urgency called out by Italy, and illegal immigration making extreme right parties so big in the West, I'm very concerned. We need to find a way to fix Libya. We need to find a way to fix the southern border, because it's undermining all our democracy, and it's making extreme parties way bigger. So that's something I think also on Iran. I made a report on Iran and the Middle East for NATO PA. I presented that 2 weeks ago in Luxembourg. It was a very interesting debate. So I think it's, yes, we need to talk about the East, of course. We need to talk about Ukraine, let that be very clear. They have our full Belgian support. But we need to talk about global approach, and that means that we need to do things also on the South, make better agreements also within NATO, of course, European Union, of course, bilaterally, and I know that Italy is doing a lot, Spain, France. I loved the speech of the French speaker, it was really, really good. But we need also to emphasize that in the Vilnius summit, we cannot only talk about the East, we also need to talk about the South. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Now I'd like to give the floor to Madam Dovilė Šakalienė, member of National Defense Committee of Seimas, and next and last in our list is Mr. Audronis Ažubalis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Dear colleagues, welcome to Vilnius. We are really happy to see you. And as we are among friends, then I will allow myself to talk about some of the inconvenient topics, because we are already facing certain aspects that were overlooked for a really long time, and we really have to face them now. And another one that I suggest for your attention is the myths that are related to Russia, that were planted by Russia and openly or secretly still cultivated by them, and that influence our decision-making processes, both in NATO and globally. So the first myth, which happily is crumbling already, but still is persistent in the thinking of some serious decision makers, is the non-escalation myth. Non-escalation through concession, through compromises, through non-provocation of Russia. And we all know what cost that has brought upon us. When we thought that maybe conceding to Russia will not provoke it, and what do we have now? 7 invasions only during the past 3 decades. When Russia stopped being Soviet Union, well, the Soviet Union, let me remind you, it was not a union. It was a terrible jail, and we were jailed for 50 years, just like other republics of so-called union. They called themselves Russian Federation 3 decades ago. It didn't change their behavior. And our concession cost us what is happening now in Ukraine. It cost us what happened in Georgia, in Moldova, in Sakartvelo, in other countries. So in that sense, I really suggest that when we talk about Russia's threats, when we talk about the pretexts it's inventing, we remember just one thing. Russia has never needed any justification for aggression, for invasion, for denying identity of other nations. They are really happily inventing them themselves. And if we do or do not do something to protect our values, to protect freedom of us and our neighbors, it will not influence their decision-making. So just like Anders Fogh Rasmussen said in Copenhagen last week, when I'm asked what Russia thinks about, for example, Ukraine joining NATO, I say, I don't care. We should start caring about our interests, our safety and security. And the second myth is expansion of NATO would provoke Russia. And this myth somehow is still alive, which is really surprising, because when we look historically, every state that was accepted to NATO is not attacked by Russia. We remember how difficult discussion was about Baltic states, how difficult it was to prove that, well, accepting us to NATO will defend us, and how many of those said, no, that would provoke Russia. Did it? It did not. Finland, just now. Remember how Russia was speaking about it just last year. If Finland just moves into that direction, what will happen? Well, Finland is in NATO. Did anything happen? No. So let's make the same decision about Ukraine. Because only the states that are in the club of NATO, those are safe from Russia. So in that sense, expansion of NATO is the best prevention of further expansion of Russian Empire. And the third one, which is also surprisingly still very vivid, is that it's Putin's war and not Russia's war. No, my dear friends, it's not Putin's war. When we look at the imperial expansion tendencies, at the modus operandi of Russia for hundreds of years, not only for decades, the leaders changed, but the modus operandi did not. And when people were talking that, for example, Mr. Yeltsin was the one who tried to bring democracy to Russia, he also brought the precedent of the most destroyed city, if you remember Chechnya. So what we see here is that, in this sense, we really ought to open our eyes to what is actually happening there. I've been working with Ukrainian researchers for months, and for 6 months in a row, which shows tendency, so it's not incidental, it's not fragmented. Their research shows that more than 2/3 of Russian society support this war. What is more interesting, I think, for people in this room, is that also month after month, very stable number from 32 to 34% of Russians believe that already today, invasion into Baltic countries, so-called special military operation, is justified. 1 out of 3. And also the same number feel that already today, taking the Suwalki corridor is also justified. Also, when asked how many of them would not support invasion into Baltic countries, it's 17%, less than 20. Among the most popular reasons are, for example, our closer cooperation with NATO, discrimination of Russian-speaking population, or if Russian regime would decide that our government is Nazi government, for example, just like Ukrainian government led by Jewish president. So, I mean, we should really understand that our wishful thinking, that maybe they will be rational, they will change their opinion if regime changes, let's not be naive. And I think that also really changes our perspective when we look into the future. So therefore, I think that we should clearly understand that Ukrainian membership will not provoke, but prevent further expansion wave of Russia, and that time is of the essence, because Ukraine does not have unending amounts of people that can be killed in battlefield. We do not have unending amount of children that can be kidnapped. We do not have what we all have here. I mean, so in this sense, if we really want to help Ukraine win, we should not only provide them means to survive, but we should provide them with means to win. And we, all politicians, especially most of us like me working in security area, we understand this subtle difference, which actually makes a red line. So in that sense, I suggest that our unanimous support to speedy victory of Ukraine, to accession of Ukraine to NATO as soon as the war actions are over, and declaring that very clearly in Vilnius summit is not only our moral obligation, but also pragmatic interest if we really want to stop that bloody empire from spreading, if we really want to prevent further bloodshed, but not only talk about it, but actually prevent it. So let's be realistic and let's be efficient. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker in this session, Mr. Audronius Ažubalis, head of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly delegation of Lithuanian Seimas. Please, Mr.
Thank
Audronius.
you, Madam Speaker. Dear colleagues, today, unfortunately, I will often I allow myself to say that it seems that the situation in Ukraine and in this region is not taken seriously. And political decisions on Ukraine are constantly postponed. Some political leaders trying to find explanation, talking about need of practical support of Ukraine. Nobody arguing with that. Practical support is vital, but it should go hand in hand with political decisions that would bring Ukraine into the NATO. Some like to talk about security guarantees for Ukraine, but we are all perfectly know that there are not other security guarantees except membership in NATO. Security guarantees that are not underpinned by tangible modalities would only generate uncertainty and would not fundamentally address the problem of the gray zones in Ukraine. Dear colleagues, let me repeat myself with a proposal which I brought to the table in Luxembourg in the last spring session. My proposal was that upcoming Vilnius summit is a unique opportunity for allies to issue an invitation to Ukraine to join NATO, provided the accession process would start at the 75th NATO summit in Washington in 2024, and ratification would follow gradually after. Dear colleagues, issuing an invitation in Vilnius does not mean that the accession protocols must be signed immediately. Issuing an invitation to Ukraine in Vilnius would send a signal to Moscow that when it comes to Ukraine's NATO membership, the case is closed and the issue has been taken off the table. Proposals to postpone the decision on Ukraine's membership until after the war might be counterproductive, as it could intensify the Kremlin to continue the war effort indefinitely. And at the end, dear friend, my friend Theo, you said that some red lines were crossed by Euro-Atlantic community in their support to Ukraine. Sorry, I disagree. Russia completely crossed all, I would say, red lines, starting from raping women in occupied territories, killing, torturing people, stealing children, bombing the civilian objects. I think it's a clear answer who crossed the red lines. And let me remind, if I'm not mistaken, it was a former French Prime Minister Clemenceau, when he was asked by someone who started the First World War, his answer was, I don't know who started the First World War, but I know for sure that not a Belgium attacked the Germany first. I think this is an answer to your doubts. Thank you.
Thank you, dear colleagues. I'm very happy to note that now we have the real debate, but unfortunately we have to go into coffee break. So I hope we will continue that after. And dear colleagues, so coffee break from 11:30 till 12. The draft of chair conclusions will be distributed there. And afterwards, we will convene back in this hall at 12 o'clock for a second session on internal transformation, increasing defense spending, strengthening deterrence and defense. Thank you so much. Ну-ка. Karščiau. Kas knapsėjo. Vis tik ta Ukraina išlenda, nori, nenori, visur, žinai.